Welcome to episode 14 of the Leading Adam podcast. Today we have a guest, Laura Cope, and we're going to get into all kinds of topics, but mainly we're going to spend our time talking about what it's like to navigate a learning disability in the pursuit of success, and how do you use that to lead well. Stay with us. The Leading Adam podcast is hosted by me, Adam Binkerd. I've spent the last 10 years researching how a healthy human experience is the key to innovation and student retention in education, and now I'm taking to the mic to share what I've learned. Hear how I've defied the odds and transformed from a landscaper to a national expert in student success in less than 10 years. Not an educator? That's okay. Stay tuned for entertaining stories and practical takeaways about leading self, leading leaders, and leading culture. The Leading Adam podcast is co-hosted by Erica Crabtree, produced by Chris Spangle, and sponsored by 240 Solutions. Connect with us at 240solutions.com. And I hope you'll stay tuned, because together we can change the world. Okay, episode 14 of the Leading Adam podcast today. I'm excited. You'll notice I don't have my counterpart, Erica, which is sad, but I do have her chair, and I can't tell you how powerful it feels. The power is getting to me, Erica. You may be in trouble when you come back. Just kidding. Of course, we have a guest this morning that I am really excited about and have only known now for a total of maybe 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's been a good 30 minutes.
But it turns out we are like peas in a pod.
Yep.
This is going to be interesting. Laura Cope, thank you for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing more about you and what you do, and sharing that with the listeners. So let's get into that part. Let's just kind of start there.
Okay.
You are Laura Cope. Tell us, who is Laura Cope first? Let's start there. A little bit of personal.
Sure, definitely. So, personal. I'm married. My husband and I've been married for about 25 years. We have two children, both seniors. One's a senior in college. One's a senior in high school.
All right.
We live in Indiana. We've grown up here, basically. I've lived here my entire life. So.
Nice. Yeah. So a Midwesterner at heart.
I guess so, yes.
Okay. All right. So a Midwesterner at heart.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, beach or mountain person?
It depends, right? That's always the right answer to give. It does depend. I think it depends on who I'm with. If I'm with my husband, I would say mountain. He loves hiking, going to the cabin. That's his place. Mm-hmm. So if he's happy, I'm happy.
Okay.
If I'm with my kids, we're going to the beach.
You're going to the beach.
We're going to Gulf Shores next week for fall break. So looking forward to spending some time at the beach.
It does make difference who you're with. If I had to guess, I would have said mountain. And the only reason I would have guessed that is because our little banter before we started recording tells me we're basically the same person.
Yeah.
Man, I am mountain all day long.
Yeah.
I'm going to choose that. Not a big fan of the beach personally, but
do you get bored?
Absolutely. I don't know what we're doing here. We're laying in the sun. This is terrible.
It's been 5 minutes now.
Absolutely. What's next?
Yeah.
So, okay. Midwesterner at heart, married, 2 kids.
Yep.
What do you do professionally?
Yeah. So right now, for the past 3 years, I have served as the Chief of Exceptional Learners for Purdue Polytechnic High Schools.
Okay.
And I love it. I've, like I said, I've been there 3 years. And so if you're not familiar with Purdue Polytechnic, we are high schools that opened, I think 7 or 8 years ago now, to service students that are underrepresented at Purdue University. And so students that are not typically represented there on campus, we try to open in those communities and bridge that gap for students to be able to get to Purdue or another four-year university. Yeah. It really resonates with me, as I was a first generation college student. And so I can really identify with some of those barriers that they're experiencing academically, and just trying to, navigate getting into college as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I'm so excited about this. I'm a big fan of Purdue Polytechnic and what they do. And mostly it's because of the underrepresented population.
Yep.
It really is a massive passion for me. I am a big believer in justice and equity and inclusion. And I mean that in the most human sense. Because there were so many moments in my life, Laura, where I felt like I didn't fit. I didn't belong. I wasn't as smart as other kids. I didn't do well in school. So, I was kind of on that side of this equation. And so to have a role like yours.
Yeah, it's a blessing.
I can imagine it's so fulfilling. And so we can't skip past Chief of Exceptional
Yes.
Learners. If there's ever a title on the planet that I might actually aspire to have, it's
title.
that one. Chief
title.
of Exceptional Learners. What is that?
So in my role, I primarily work with teachers. So the special education teachers at our school that serve our special education students, I support those individuals to make sure that really their needs are met in every way that you can imagine, so that they're able to work with the students and do what they do so well. Same thing with our students that are English language learners. So I work with those teachers to make sure their curriculum that they need is in place, that they're supported as well to be able to support their students. Along with that is a ton of compliance. So if you are identified as a special education student or a multilingual learner, you have an individualized plan with specific goals and progress monitoring to make sure that you're making progress to meet your goals. And all of that is very legal and has to be done in a certain timeline and a certain time frame. And so my office heavily oversees the compliance in all those areas. We want to make sure that we are serving our students really well and that we are compliant in every way possible.
Yeah, we've talked a few times across the season one here how regulated education is, and for good reason.
Yeah.
Even though it gets in the way sometimes. But I know we're going to learn in ways as we talk about how do you navigate within those regulations to really bring value to those you're serving. And what I love most about your description of what you do is that you're both this compliance side for exceptional learners, for the process that needs to be met, as well as support side.
Yeah.
And that makes me really happy because one of the themes that Leading Adam is kind of predicated on is this idea that you cannot pour from an empty cup.
Right.
And what I hear is that the chief of exceptional learners is a role that gets to pour into cups, that pours into cups.
Yes, that's exactly how I feel.
And that is a perfect fit, which you know as well as I do. We had not talked about this. I did not know this was going to come up, but I think it's perfect because you get the opportunity to bring an experience to those special education teachers that they're at the front line. They're working with the student directly. Your responsibility is to provide support for them. And we process that as belonging, vulnerability, and shared purpose. I can't wait to discover how you're bringing that, but that has to be super fulfilling.
It is the best job. I really do love my job. Like I mentioned before, I've been with Purdue for 3 years. Before I was at Purdue, I was at Goodwill Education Initiatives, working with the Excel Centers. I did that for about a decade. When I left there, we had 16 schools. So I was working with about 40 special education teachers when I was there. And I really had to get good at figuring out what motivates people and keeping them motivated so that they were happy and they wanted to come to work and they were pouring into their students. And so I really took a step back and said, what is my job here? Compliance is really important, but no one loves compliance. No one loves the legal aspect.
What?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah. Nobody, you're shocked, right? And so, I really had to figure out of these 40 people that I'm managing, how do I pour into them and how do I make sure that they feel supported in their role? And so
what did you learn? You said you've had to adapt to kind of learn what motivates people. Let's talk that path.
Okay.
I mean, really, what motivates people? That I'm going to add to this because there's a lot of easy answers, I think. But what you have had to learn across your career is what sustainably motivates people.
Right.
And so I'm going to add that little caveat here, like what motivates people, and then what motivates people that's sustainable for them.
It's different. I feel like there's some buckets that I can probably think about when I think about my career and what I've learned motivates people. I think for me, I have to build relationships to figure that out. And so that's always my number one thing is how do I really, truly, genuinely, I like to get to know people. That's the fun part of my job. And then once I get there and can kind of figure out what's going to motivate them, it's really different for everyone. I think some of my teachers, one of the buckets is just belonging, being on that team. And so doing things together is really important to them.
Yeah.
You know, the pitch-ins, going to professional development, going out after work, making sure that I include them and just remember things about them, right? So like, hey, how's your kid? I know he broke his arm. How are you dealing with that as a family? Like, what's the impact like? And is there anything that I can do to support you at work while, you know, you're dealing with that kind of thing? Or just shouting them out to the rest of the team, like, hey, did you know that Adam did this really great thing? Professionally or personally. And so just kind of creating that team culture is really important to some people. And that's really motivating for those people to be on a team. Other people, that's really not something that's like motivating to them. And so I think another bucket that I've seen people get motivated by is like that career trajectory. And so they really want to grow in their career. And so in my role, how can I help that? And so is it creating a ladder? I can't just promote people that want to be promoted, but maybe I can help you find a way to go back to school for free. So I have two people right now that were really interested in furthering their degree. I knew some pathways that they could get funding for that. And so helping connect those individuals to that and then checking in with them often, like, hey, how's that coursework going? What are you learning about right now? Let me read one of your papers, and just trying to make sure that they feel supported from me, that you're in school. I'm here to help you. Like, let me help you. Use me. I've went to school a long time, and maybe I can be of use to you. So that's a bucket. There's a million different buckets that
you named two buckets that, again, I'm honestly, Laura, having a hard time processing how odd this is, how similar we are. And so I've got to say to those listening, I promise you, I met this woman 45 minutes ago. But what you just described, you don't know this. So my company, 240 Solutions, built a tool to measure the human experience in teams and organizations. It measures belonging, vulnerability, and shared purpose. We talked not about the tool, but we talked about those three elements before we turned the camera on. What you don't know is that when we measure belonging, what we're measuring is that I feel a sense of community and that I feel like I have a future with this team.
We didn't know that.
What you just outlined is the things that you have learned, which is really important to note to the listener. As we've been saying, everything that we're talking about in the human experience is built in research. It is built in data. We didn't make this up one day. I didn't dream it up and then decide I was going to start a business. We did the research to figure it out. What you just described to me, Lori, is that across your career, you have observed what motivates people in the sense of belonging is a community and more or less the opportunity to progress and grow and reach what they want. Those are the exact two elements that we're measuring in our diagnostic. And that to me is number one, confirmation. Why am I sharing this with you? Because it's confirmation for me that the tool is valuable. And there's data, there's this part, but then there's real world, you're a practitioner. And having just the wherewithal to observe, and that's what you picked up. Yeah. I'm really, honestly, that's incredible.
That's really interesting. You said there was 3 things in your tool?
Yeah, we measure vulnerability
which
and,
you
and
get
shared
to
purpose
after you
also.
After you build the trust and those kind of things, then you can get vulnerable because you've developed that rapport. That makes sense.
Yeah, so there's all kinds of things, and of course, this isn't about 240. It's about apparently exceptional learners, so which brings me to the next. Your role is to support those who are pouring into and supporting exceptional learners. I know a little bit about the Excel Education Center, adult learners, the demographic that's serving. I can't help but ask, you have a passion clearly for this. You chose this particular population. Why?
Well, I have to back up a little bit. So I'll try to be brief, but
you're good.
So my parents were teen parents. They had my mom had my brother when she was 17. They both dropped out of high school. They did get their GEDs. My mom actually went on eventually to get her nursing degree. She had her LPN license and then her RN license. And I think that really unlocked for her like the power of education, and my kids are going to get an education. Like it was non-negotiable in my house growing up. Like you will get that education, which was really easy for my brother. He was really smart. He went on to become a pharmacist, and he's doctor now, Dr. Jackson. And so great for him. But for me, school was really, really hard. And I know I really struggled, and my parents unfortunately didn't have, the education to really understand why I was struggling. And so when I was in the 4th grade, my teacher identified that I was having a hard time, had me tested for special education, and I was found to have a learning disability, and I was dyslexic. I remember studying for spelling tests all week long, and man, I failed every time I would fail those Friday spelling tests. It was just like my heart would sink getting that paper back. I'd get grounded every weekend. It was awful. Anyway,
but you're over it, right?
I'm over it. I'm not holding on to it at all. But knowing that my mom was really pushing education, when I did luckily get into college, I thought, well, I probably will never graduate because I just didn't feel that strong academically, but I'll do the best I can while I'm here. I'm gonna major in special education and try to figure out what is wrong with my brain and why I do work the way that I do. And so that's how I got into special education. I won't bore you with some of the details, but I met Scott Bess, who in the charter world, if you know Scott, he's kind of a big deal. He's really innovative and just a really great guy. And he was opening the Excel centers, and he explained to me the premise of giving adults a second chance because they don't have that high school diploma. And that was like my background, right? My parents had to go back to school. They got a GED. I remember that struggle, and I really wanted to be a part of that work.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I did that for a decade and thought I would retire from Goodwill. I loved it there. I still love the people there. But another friend came along a few years ago and said, hey, Purdue Polytechnic, we are opening these schools, and the purpose is to get people that are underrepresented to college. And man, that really tugged at me as well, because I was like, I love that work. I've got to be part of that work.
Because you remembered a mama.
Absolutely.
Who wouldn't let you skirt that.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And then now you get an opportunity. Kudos to your mom, first of all.
Yeah.
But to be able to step in and say, I'm going to be the mama that these kids needed or these adults, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because you're going to stand in that gap and say, you're good enough. You're smart enough.
Yep.
You can do this.
Yep.
Your mom did that for you, even though I'm sure it was hard.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was. But there are so many, as you alluded to earlier, there are so many tools. I mean, if you have an IEP or if you're dyslexic and you have the desire to go to college, technology has changed the game. I mean, we are an even playing field now. Yeah.
Oh man, game changer. So I too am dyslexic. We've shared that in season 1, and you're right. It is a game changer. I did not read a book cover to cover until I was 26 years old because I could not figure out how to get through it. You turn the page and it's all new because you're like, I don't know what was on the last page.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's all you had. There wasn't tech. We won't talk about our ages. We're in our 20s, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we were in school, the fact that you had a teacher who said this child needs extra support, needs different support, right? Is powerful. Unfortunately, that's not a part of my story. And I went nearly 4 decades without knowing that I was dyslexic. But in the process, I think you had that opportunity to be aware of it.
Yeah.
Are you working now with students that are coming in aware of this challenge?
What's so interesting about that is I would say I've had more experiences where students are not aware, particularly when I was at Goodwill at the Excel Centers working with adults.
Makes sense.
They knew they dropped out of high school. They knew school was really hard, and now they're back. And we get their educational records, and we're looking at everything. And you had an IEP, an individual education plan. You had a disability, and they would say, what? I never knew that. No wonder I hated school. No wonder it was so hard for me. I tried so hard and I never made, it didn't make any sense to me. So I just avoided school. I eventually ended up dropping out. And so that was a huge aha to me. And my role is students need to learn about their own disability so that they can then advocate for what they need. And so I would say more often than not, no, people really were not aware that they had an IEP or a disability.
Yeah, and I think there's a positive and a negative, I think that it's only positive if you look at the environment around the student. In my case, I am so grateful I did not know.
Really?
And I know a lot of people wouldn't support that or agree with me, but what I had was an environment at home that nurtured the fact that I had value, right? And if I'm struggling in school because of a learning disability of any kind, but also don't have the support at home to say, you're not stupid, you're not this, even though I still wrestled with that, it kind of doubles down. And I think in the learners that I had interacted with through the Excel centers, that was often the case, is if they didn't know, they also had very little self-worth, self-concept.
Yeah.
The reason I say I'm glad I didn't know is because I had self-concept. I had parents that were affirming and supporting. And although they couldn't convince me that I wasn't stupid, because a parent's supposed to tell you you're smart.
Right.
They gave me the opportunity, or the positioning to, when I began to encounter things that I was good at, it began to remember their words. Right. But those words were there for me to draw on.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful for my parents for that.
Yeah.
But if a student doesn't have that source, someone said, I wish I could remember the person who said this, but if a person has only ever known tough love, would they hear anything other than tough when you express that?
That's interesting.
And that's the case. I knew love. Right, I had that environment, and out of that, I could draw from that and say, I'm really good at this. Maybe my parents were onto something, right? Maybe I'm not stupid, and that's where it started for me. That allowed me to go, then what am I?
Yeah.
If I'm not stupid, what does that make me?
Yeah.
Is it okay if we talk about dyslexia?
Absolutely.
Your journey?
Sure, yeah.
I'm so intrigued.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, you were fourth grade, you said?
Fourth grade.
Did you wrestle with feeling stupid?
Absolutely, I did. So, I think it was maybe 1988. And my parents, when they were told that I had a learning disability, they just said, well, no, she doesn't. She just needs to try harder. They really didn't understand what a learning disability was. So then I was like in the dark after that. Like I remember oh, they said that. What does that mean? Like I in the fourth grade, I had no clue what that meant. And I could see my peers around me. They were able to read a science text and then apply what they read, where I was like, I have to read it and then read it again. And I still don't even know what I read the third time I read it. So yeah, I just felt like there's something really wrong with me. I had very low self-esteem academically, had to make up for it in other avenues, try to figure out other ways to get through school, clever ways. That we won't talk about that. But yeah, I definitely.
Or will we? Let me remind the audience. I'm the host today. Erica's not in here. I'm in the power seat. So who knows? Maybe we'll learn how you got through.
You have to do what you have to do sometimes.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But no, I definitely I really did struggle with how to learn, and I figured it out really on my own as I got older, finding keywords in the text. You know what I mean? Like, what's this question asking? Here's this word. I'm just going to look through the book until I find that word and try to pair those things up. I had some great teachers as well to help. I remember it was very embarrassing in college. I think it was 1997 probably. So we didn't have laptops, that everybody had accessible. I think I had a word processor in my dorm that barely worked, but we had computer labs.
Green text.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember.
We had handwritten essays at the end of every class. And so I remember one of my teachers, luckily she understood me, even though I didn't understand myself. She said, I can't read your handwriting and your spelling is terrible, but I think your ideas are good. She said, so when we have a test from now on, you go take it in the computer lab, print it out and bring it back to me. And I was embarrassed at the time, like, oh man, why can't I just sit in here with my little blue book like everybody else?
Right.
But now I'm like, oh, she was providing me a great accommodation. I could use spell check. I could, type it out. What a blessing for people like that saw something in me that I didn't know.
And in a time when the term accommodation was not really a part of our understanding.
Absolutely right.
So really kudos to her for giving you an avenue.
Right?
So
yeah, that was huge.
Yeah. So what part, if any, has resilience played in your journey? Because I mean, you're a successful professional now, getting the opportunity to sit in a high level seat to position people, to pour into students who were where you are.
Yeah.
You don't get there without resilience. So I'm making a bit of an assumption. But how has resilience played a role through your journey?
I've never thought about that question before. I mean, I suppose you're right. I suppose it does.
Leading Adam, bringing you new information here, hot off the presses. Laura is going to be processing right in front of us. So you know what resilience. Do you know what resilience means, Laura?
I suppose I do. I know that my kids are resilient. I tell them all the time. My daughter has the most amazing grit that I've ever seen out of anyone. She just never quits. And so, I think I know what resilience is. Yeah. And I suppose for me, I always felt like I was in this position where I just can't not do something. You know what I mean? Like I have to work. I have to go to work. And so when I'm there, I have to figure it out because the people around me are depending on me. And so I think for me, that's my motivation to be resilient is my teachers, they need me to figure whatever this thing is out, or my family, they need me to have a job, right? I have to figure this thing out. And so I think just that maybe is where my resilience has come from, is just like not wanting to let the people around me down and doing the best I can for those people. I think another thing that I'm thankful looking back over my 25-year career is I've been given a lot of really cool opportunities that I never thought I was capable of. I mean, I worked for the Department of Education as the Assistant Director of School Improvement and Turnaround. Again, what a cool title.
Ironic, right?
I don't even know. Yeah. But my boss saw something in me, just like my teacher saw something in me and really like motivated me that way. Like, you can do this. And her belief in me made me believe in me. And so same thing with every job I've ever had. I've been so blessed to have these bosses that saw something in me and supported me in a way that like I could not have just been resilient enough on my own to keep coming back. But because I knew that they would rather me try and fail than to not try at all, I felt really safe and supported to be resilient. And then sometimes it didn't work out and sometimes it did, but I never felt like in trouble or like my job was on the line because of something. I've just always really had the blessing of great bosses. So I felt like I could be resilient.
Well, we try to include some practical stuff as we go along here, and we've still got about 8 minutes or so. So we're good. We don't need to rush. But for me, what you said resonates because for me, I was able to get from, I believe I'm stupid to I'm capable. And that was enough because no matter you said, well, whatever's in front of me, I can't not do it.
Right.
Which we understand is a double negative. Everybody settle down. For our education audience is judging us wholly right now. But you know what? We're dyslexic and we're excited about it.
Red lines all over this episode.
Red lines. I've come to appreciate red ink. But that was it. It's like, don't tell me I can't do something. Whether I'm stubborn or not, I don't know. I just knew because of my experience that I was having success in, showed me that, okay, I may not be stupid. So what does that make me? It makes me capable. That means effort is the result of success for me. And I hear you describing that. And I think that's really interesting. But there's something you said that I want to turn into a practical application for our community listening. And so for the leaders that are listening today, what Laura has described is that she had good bosses. She had, a teacher that was affirming and encouraging you, parents that were affirming and encouraging you, and then leaders that were affirming and encouraging you. And so I want to put these two concepts together. So This episode is not about generational leadership, but I want to chastise the leaders out there who would say this generation just can't, whatever, fill in the blank. First of all, stop saying that. Second of all, I want to challenge you that if you want this generation that's working in your teams, maybe they're in your classrooms, whatever the case may be, if you want them to be more resilient and to be able to push through challenges, why don't you start with encouragement and affirmation? And so I'm going to draw the connection here that affirmation and encouragement is genuinely the foundation on which resilience is built. Because, Laura, I bet you would agree with me here that you were allowed, even though you consciously weren't saying, I'm resilient, you felt safe enough to get up again and do it.
Absolutely.
Because if you failed, you knew that didn't kill your value.
Yeah.
And so I think this generation now is missing so much of this affirmation and encouragement. And there's someone judging me currently saying, no, this generation's soft. They've had too much of it. That's a lie. Because they haven't had a human being sit across from them and say, you matter.
Yeah.
You're valuable. And you had that experience. And I know just from listening to you, you now sit in a position where you're giving that experience. And that is so encouraging to hear. So, talk a little bit about how we'll stay with, we'll get away from dyslexia and your personal experience here, but just share how is your experience, your history? What is the number one thing you would say? I show up every day for my team to ensure that I'm giving them this. How do you process that?
I guess I would fill in the blank, and I know we've said this word a lot, and I don't want to sound cliche, but just support. I mean, I don't want them to ever feel like they have too much paperwork in the way of seeing kids. Give me the paperwork. I'll do it. You know what I mean? Let me clear a couple periods of your day. Let's get a sub in your classroom so you can get that done. Yeah. I'm having a hard time at home. There's something going on. Talk to me, talk to a counselor, talk to your best friend, but get that help. And so I think for me, it's creating that trusting relationship where they're going to tell me what's in their way, whether it's something at work, something at home. Maybe it's a principal that they are not feeling is hearing them or their ideas. And so I guess for me, I try to show up for people. I try to be responsive. Like, I think anyone that's worked for me knows that if they email, text, call me, I'm going to answer every single time. If you call me, I'm going to leave, I wouldn't leave this situation, but like, unless I'm in a really important meeting, I'm going to take your call. And because you're important to me, you matter to me. And I want to be able to support you in that way. And so I think creating that trusting relationship where people can be vulnerable with me helps me to be able to support them however they need. Because I look at the people that I support right now, and their needs are all different. And I'm honored to be the person that they can come to be able to help them. Yeah. And so that's the part of my job that I show up for and that I love. I love it, and you've personalized it, and what a great way for us to wrap today. You've hearkened back to another episode where we shared from a leader that I had interacted with. He said, it all starts with giving a damn. And that's really what you're outlining is, number one, before I get in the car, I care. And so you care in a way that allows you to say, how can I best serve this employee? And you could walk through and give them hearty pats on the back and send them affirmation notes. I'm sure that you do that as well. And that is important. I'm not taking away from that. But sometimes you just got to say, let me do this so that you can be present. Yeah. What an incredible way to support your team. And I personally, as someone who's invested a decade of his life understanding the human experience at work and why it matters, I want to thank you for leading the way you lead. Thanks. I don't have to observe it to know that it's happening. I mean, this conversation is such a window into that. And so I can imagine your team is going to celebrate this opportunity with you. And I'm sure they'll love to hear you just express, why do you lead the way you lead? And
And I think we need more of that, Laura. So thank you for joining us. I can see as we move forward, it would be awesome to come back and to have you back. This has been so much fun. We spent so much of our time talking kind of down this path of what's it like to struggle with a learning disability and be successful. And you and I both have that story. And so perhaps we'll cycle back and talk more about the practicality of leading the way that you lead. But for now, I've really enjoyed the conversation and appreciate you being on.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Thanks for joining us here at the Leading Adam podcast. We hope you found inspiration and hope to see you again next time. Leave us a comment on YouTube, or if you have an idea for a future episode, let us know that too. You can connect with us at 240solutions.com. Thanks, and we hope to see you again next time.